Alright, so today in this video we're looking at we're going to build a flyer game in code.org. It's lesson 24, the mini project. And there's several steps here, so I'm just on step 2 and we're going to kind of follow this step by step and just kind of build this game. So it says go to the animation tab, make sure that you have the images that you want. So make sure you go up here to animation and select the images that you want. You do not have to follow these, but we have a coin and we have a rock. And of course we have our flybot. So if I go back to the code here, we've created already our variable for player, which is that flybot right here. Okay, so it says find the code segment, code comment, game setup right here, and create 3 more sprites, the target and 2 obstacles. Okay, so first thing we've got to do is we need to make our target. So we're going to go, let's kind of move this up here a little bit. And we're going to go ahead and drag out another variable. And we're going to call this target. And then what the target is we're going to go ahead and set the animation for this. And this actually happens to be the coin. So we're going to go ahead and select that, and we make sure we name our animation here target so that these two are the same. And then let's go ahead and so if I run this right now, here's our coin. Now, one thing, the character moves, or will eventually, if we go up here to the top, we can see that the character is going to stay here, and the coin's right there. So for right now, we're just going to keep it this way, but what we really are going to want to do is actually set a different location for this. So instead of 200, 200. Let's kind of see what they want you to do here. Scale each one to the size you want, place them where you want them, on or off the screen. In the sample game, the obstacles and the coin were placed randomly, but you don't need to do that yet. So eventually, though, when we do this, we're going to want to change these locations. But for right now, we're just going to leave it right here. And then set the starting velocity of the obstacles. Use the X velocity to move left and right, and use the Y velocity to move up and down. So for right now, even though they do have kind of down here in the lower right hand corner, I'm just going to leave it right here in the middle for right now because I know we're going to make this random at some point. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and drag out another one, and we'll call this obstacle. Let's make it X. Alright, and then let's set the animation for that. And if I go to my animations over here, I have a coin, I have a rock, and we're actually going to make that rock twice. So that's kind of how they have it on here. So if we look up here, there's a rock, and there's one right there. So we're going to call this obstacle X. Oops, put my cursor there. And we're going to set that to rock. Then let's drag out another one and let's make obstacle Y. And let's give it a little gap here because we're going to end up setting the velocity as well to this. And then let's go ahead and call this and then set the animation again. And we're going to make this one the rock as well. And then let's go ahead and set the velocities. So this obviously is obstacle X. And let's set that to just 5 for right now. And let's drag out another one here for velocity Y. And make sure because this is obstacle Y, we want to have velocity Y. And we'll set that one for the same. Now this is going to look vastly different than this because what we want to do is eventually, again, add some random generation to this. But we can kind of see that our rocks start here. Okay. And it does say you can change your animations. Okay, so it says right here, they were placed randomly, but you don't need to do that yet. So I guess we're going to do that in the next part. So we're just going to leave that for right now. So we have our We have our player bot, we have our coin, and we have our 2 rocks. Okay? Alright, so let's move on to part 3. Okay, so in part 3 here, it says find the code comment falling, use the counter pattern with the player's sprite velocity y to make the flyer fall. Test your code to make sure it works. And it should fall faster as it goes down. So if we scroll down here, go down to falling, and notice it keeps our code, right, from the next thing. So we're now on part 3. We're going to go ahead and set the velocity. So, and we're going to fall. So let's go ahead and do that with the y, and we'll do player. And then we want to have, whenever the way these work, we want it to increase the velocity. So we're going to use a math here, because what we want to do is take the previous velocity value and increase it. So we're going to say, we're going to put the math here, and then we're going to drag this out, and we're going to drag this y over to this. And we're going to do player, and then we'll just add 1 to it. So basically what we're doing is taking the previous velocity of the player, which if we go up here, it's just the default value, whatever that is. Okay, and then it's just going to increase that by 1. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. And you can see how it accelerates down the screen. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and we're going to move on to part 4. Okay, so now in part 4 here, we're working on jumping. So next, the player sprite needs to jump when the player presses the up arrow, because currently right now the player just falls. So we're going to go ahead and do this, find the comment player controls, add a conditional if block down here. So we're going to go down to our draw loop here, and we have our player controls. So we want to change the y velocity when the player clicks up. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So we're going to go ahead and draw an if, and then we want to say when they press the up arrow. So when the key is down and it becomes up, then what we want to do is change the velocity, because currently what we do is we have the velocity increasing right here. Now what we want to do is actually make that go down. So we're going to drag one of these out here. And we're going to say that that is -10, just so that it's going to be more than what this is. So if we click on this and hit run, yeah, I can hit the up, and there it goes. Okay. All right, so we have that. Let's move on to step 5. Okay, so in step 5 here now, it says the player should also be able to float left and right. So very similar to what we did before. It says find the player control, and we're going to affect the velocity x. So if we go down here, you can see that we have decreased the x velocity when the user clicks left, and increased the x velocity when the user clicks right. So we're going to go ahead and basically set this up very similar to what we did with this. So we're going to go ahead and create an if right here, and we're going to create an if right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and do key down for both of these. And this one is for the left, so let's go ahead and select left. And this one is for the right. And then we're just going to go ahead and affect the player velocities of x. So we're going to drag this over here, and we're going to drag this one here. So now this is a little bit different than this one. We don't just want to set it a number. We want the velocity to change over time. So we want it to either increase or decrease. And in this case, we want it to decrease. So we're going to go over here to math, and we're going to say that this one is going to decrease in value, and this one is going to increase in value. And then we're going to go ahead and drag the velocity x back in here for both of these. And I need to make sure that I make this player, oops, don't just leave them as sprite. In this one we're going to do 0.3, and this one we're going to do 0.3. So it's not going to increase a lot, but it's enough that it will allow us there you go. So now we have our character that can move right and left, and we can have him move them up. And you can change these a little bit if you want your character to be able to move quicker right to left, but that's just what I chose for that. So let's go ahead and take a look at step 6. Alright, so in step 6 here, it says when the obstacles move off the screen, they should loop back to the other side at a random position. Find the code comment looping and add conditionals that check that. Okay, so we're going to go down here to looping, which is right here. And we're going to add some if statements in. So we're going to add, because they're conditionals, right? So we're going to add this if, and we're going to add another if right below it. And this happens to do with obstacle X and obstacle Y. So we're going to go ahead and add a math in here. And we're going to say that this one is greater than, and this one's greater than as well. So then we're going to go here and we're going to say that it's dot y, oops, dot x, and then this one's dot y, sorry. And this one's going to be obstacle x, and this one's going to be obstacle y. So what these are is if they move off the screen, right? So if it's down here or over here, so let's say 450 so that they're completely off the screen, then we want to do something. Well, what we want it to do is we want to say we're going to, and actually let's go ahead and we'll set the X and Y locations here real quick. Because what we're going to do is move them. And you can actually just copy this and then paste it in here. That would make it way easier. And now I don't have numbers filled in here yet, but we know that this one, the dot X, we want to move this off the screen over here. So we're going to go ahead and do -50. And then what we want to do is for the Y location, we want to have it along this range. So we're going to add in a random. And we're going to say that's between 50 and 350. And we're going to do the same thing down here, identical to that. So we're going to go ahead and bring in the dot X, bring in the dot Y, and then we're going to just copy this. Control C for copy, and then Control V for paste. Just makes it much easier. I don't have to worry about my typing skills. Making a mistake. And then we're going to go ahead and bring the random number in and make this 50 and 350. Now, one thing, so if we run this right now, oops, you can see the rocks have moved to a different location. Oh, actually, haha, not the best. So this, let's get rid of this here for a second. We actually, for Y, we want this one to be random and not the, yes, because otherwise they're going to go to the same spot, which is not what we want to do. Now let's try that again. There we go. Okay. Now one thing about this, so I have their starting locations here. I think we should go up here and actually affect their starting locations. So we got our obstacle X and obstacle Y. So let's go ahead and we're going to change all of these. The target, we're going to give them all random numbers. Now the target is just going to be 0 to 400, because then our coin will just show up anywhere. And we're going to do this with this one as well. And we could have done this earlier on, so if you did that, great. So this is the coin, its starting location, and then what we're going to do is affect obstacle X. So we're going to do the same thing. And we're going to make that negative 50. And we're going to make this one, actually, oops, wrong thing. Drag this over here. This is going to be negative 50 because of the X location. So this is X and Y, kind of like what I ran into down below there. So then this one's going to be 0 and 400. And then we're going to do the same thing down here, but this one's going to be negative 50. And we're going to drag in the random number and affect the X. Okay. So now, if I did that correctly, so my coin showed up in a new spot each time. Now he's not moving, or they're not moving. Oops. Got an error in there. Interesting that that ran. There we go. So now the coins started at a new spot. All right, so we're going to have to do some more work here, but that's for part 6. Let's go ahead and move on to part 7. All right, so for part 7, we're dealing with sprite interactions here. So it says when your character touches the coin, you should reset it somewhere on the screen, and the obstacles should push the player across the screen. So do this. Find the code comment, sprite interactions, and read the comments in that section. Create a conditional that checks whether the player is touching the target and moves the target to the random place. And create 2 new collisions that make 2 new obstacles push the player across the screen. Test your code to make sure it works. All right, so let's go down here to sprite interactions, which are right here. Okay, so we want to look at sprite interactions. What we want to do is it says reset the coin when the player touches it. Okay, so we want to use an if. And what we want to look at is if the player is touching that, right? So pretty straightforward. We're going to go ahead and go to sprites and is touching, and we want to say that if the player is touching, oh goodness, is touching the target, which is interesting because we named this target. Normally you'd have to like coin or something like that, but it should be let's take a look here for a second. I want to go up here and look. I'm thinking that just want to make sure I named this correctly up here. Yeah, we do have a target. Okay, so when that player is touching target, what do we want it to do? We want to change moves the target to a random place if it's true. Okay, so we want to change the X and Y locations for the target. Is it the target or the player? It moves the target to the random place. Okay, so we're moving the target. Sorry about that. So what we want to do is we want to go to target, X and Y. So we're going to change this. And we're going to make these random numbers. And they can be anywhere on the screen. So we're just going to do 0 and 400. Now if you wanted to and then just keep it in a certain area, you could do that. I'm just going to use the whole screen. And then the next part of this is, it says create 2 new collisions that makes the 2 obstacles push the player. So those are pretty simple. We're just going to go ahead and do player.collide. And we could do like bounce off of and stuff, but I'm going to use collide. And if it happens to touch obstacle X, all right, So now, there we go. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. Okay, so that's how you make that happen. And it does have the ifs already down here. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the last step. So then step 8 here is just reviewing your game. Just play the game, make sure it works properly. You know, make sure that you naming your variables work. Maybe you change target to coin. Maybe you name these differently. Maybe the random numbers don't work. Maybe you have these switched like this. And make sure your ifs are all working properly. So basically you're just going to kind of work through all your code and make sure everything works. Yep, and got a little message there. It still will work, but I should probably put 0.3 like that. It just doesn't like the 0.3. And other than that, I think everything should work great. So you're just going to test out your code, make sure everything works, and then make any changes if you have some errors. Hopefully that helped you with this project, and good luck.